All right, so to start off your paper, I know it sounds extremely redundant and like you've done it on 2 projects already. This isn't your project though, this is just a practice sheet. You're going to split it into 8 sections. So we've done this before, split it in half, split it in half, split it in half again, and split it in half again. So 8 sections. I don't want to zoom out because then I have to redo the whole setup here. So just make sure you have 8 sections, 2 columns of 4. This column here will be for live days. This column here will be for independent days. So everything we do while I'm showing you will be done on this column and then on those A days. So tomorrow you'll do an eye here. Then Thursday, Thursday we'll do a nose, maybe a mouth. We might get both done. And then Friday you'll do a nose or mouth. And then, or not Friday, Monday. Then Tuesday we'll finish off the whole graph. So today we're starting with eyes. Now, if we by chance don't get through the entire eye, we should. We did in every other class. I might have to rush it at the end, but if that's the case, hopefully I'll have my recording that you can watch for tomorrow and you can finish it off tomorrow. All right, so one thing I want to mention real quick is on that post for today, there is an entire folder that has these step-by-step guides for the features. So they go the steps that I'm going over it. There's a million different ways you can go about it, but these are the ways that I teach because it's just kind of a straightforward, generic approach. So today you're just drawing what I draw. Later on, you'll draw your own features, but today you're just drawing it how I draw. So for eyes, some people start with like the almond shape, the opening of your eye. But what we're going to start with is the sphere. So this is your eyeball. So just a lightly drawn circle. Don't like try to draw a perfect circle because you're going to be erasing that circle. So you just want a nice sketchy, loose circle. Next, we're going to put in the eyelids. So we're not going to put it up here because it's the eyelid fold will go there. We are putting it over the eye. So your eyelids close over your eyeball. So you don't want it showing your entire eyeball, otherwise your eye is wide open, like you're holding it open. That's not how your eye usually is. So your eyelid's going over it. Next, we're going to do that bottom one. Notice I'm keeping these open because I'm going to shape those myself. So you don't want them to come to a complete point. Most people's aren't. Now this side here is the tear duct. So that's the side that's closest to your nose. It's not usually a point. It's usually this kind of like organic little curved C/point, like rounded triangle type shape. And then this corner here, we're just gonna round off a little bit. By the way, if you had me for intro, this could be a little bit of a review because we can't do it in colored pencil yet since not everyone has their colored pencils. But we'll approach it a little bit differently, so it won't be exactly the same, but this part might be kind of review, but it's extra practice. Okay, next we're going to do the eyelid fold. So this one does follow that line because it's folding over your eyeball. So you come up, you follow that rounded circle, and then you come down. And at this point, you can erase that circle. We don't really need it anymore. You can really erase it at any point before you actually start shading, but I just figure we might as well get rid of it once we're done using it. So you're left with just those outlines. Next, we are doing the iris. That's the colored part of your eye. Your iris is usually covered by either your top lid, your bottom lid, or both. If it's not covered by either, again, that means that your eye is wide open, which we aren't drawing. So usually mine, the top lid's over it a little bit. And again, I'm sketching this lightly so that I'm not trying super hard to make a perfect circle. Because then what you tend to do is you draw a not perfect circle and you can't erase it. So I do just kind of these little sketchy curves until I feel like I have a pretty good shaped circle. And size-wise, people do have all different size irises. Some people have pretty small ones. If you're wearing glasses, your iris is actually pretty small too. It shouldn't be any more than 1/3 of your whole eye width usually, about around that size. And then same with your pupil, which is the black circle in the middle of your eye. It also is only about 1/3 the width of your iris when it's in just normal standing. Now if you have bright light on your eyes, it gets smaller. If you're in the dark, it gets bigger. But this is just like an average size. So we've got our outlines done. Is everyone good with that? If you're done with your outlines, just type done in the chat so that I know that we can move on to shading. Okay. Seems like you guys got that part done pretty quickly. So for shading, one thing I want to mention is remember you should hold your pencil at a bit of an angle. So you don't want to hold it like you're drawing, because then what ends up happening is you're drawing your shades, which means your pencil's digging into the paper. If you hold it at an angle, you're not going to dig your pencil into the paper quite as easily. So we're going to start in this corner first, so the corner closest to the nose, which is usually a bit more in shadow. Now remember, you should be shading with feathering or scumbling, which are those circular or oval movements, not scribble shading, but nice little intentional circular or oval movements. Let me just check the chat. Okay. Now as we move toward the eye, we're not going to meet up with this line. This is the lash line, and you want to make sure we're leaving a little bit of a highlight there, because that part is usually kind of wet and it reflects. So you're not having like dark shadows coming up to it. So we're going to leave a little bit of a space and just kind of follow this shading with a space there all the way to the other side, just so we have that base there so we don't get tempted to shade up to that line. So make sure you have left a space. We might fill in it a little bit with some shading, but not yet. Now next we're going to kind of fade out that shading. Again, be holding your pencil kind of loosely. For this part, I like to hold my pencil this way because then I'm getting the flat edge of the pencil tip, not the tip of it, but the actual flat side. That way I can get more surface area covered while I'm shading, but if you're not comfortable holding it like this, you can just scoot it down in your hand and hold it like that. So remember, shading is all about pencil pressure. So you want to be lightening the pressure on your pencil as you move away from the eye. And that's the bottom half. We're going to continue this shadow over here, still leaving that space. And then bring it up to that eyelid fold and shade really darkly along that eyelid fold, because that's going back into your face. It's like a crevice on your face, so it's going to be really, really dark. There's definitely no light hitting where your skin is folding. And same idea as we did here on the outside of the eyelid fold, kind of dark shading there. We're going to shade lighter as we go up. And I'm using feathering right now because I find when it comes to shading lighter, using feathering kind of allows that more because you're definitely holding your pencil a lot more loosely. At this point, you might feel like you have a bit of a glow around your eye. That's because we haven't shaded it yet, so don't worry. We're going to shade downwards now from the eyelid here, but don't go all the way down yet. Maybe like halfway down from what you have left there. And then shade just a little bit along the top of the eye. You might notice we left a little bit of a highlight in here, reason being because your eyelid is coming forward and folding over your eye, so the light does hit like right there. Now what you can do is take your pencil and just go back over that eyelid line one more time. 1 second, my cat's about to make an appearance. Okay. And for this part here, let's just add like a slight light shade along the eye there, but not very dark because we still want to leave that highlight there, but we don't want it to look like it's like a white outline. So just enough to where it's still highlighted, but it has some toning to it. Now you might notice at this point we have not done any hair as in eyelashes on the eye yet. Reason being, when you are doing portraits, hair is always last. Hair is on top of your skin. I mean, technically it's coming out of your skin, but when you look at your face, the hair looks like it's on top of your skin. So you'll never draw the eyelashes and shade over them, because one, then you're putting skin over eyelashes and it doesn't make sense. And two, then you might also smear those lines that you just drew nice and neatly for those eyelashes, or facial hair, or eyebrows, or even the hair on your head. So you want to make sure that any type of hair is always last. So from here we're going to start the inside of the eye now. Now first we need to create a little bit of a tear duct. It's literally just adding a little line there to section it off. Then to shade that tear duct, it's not really all that difficult. I usually just shade the outside of it and leave a little highlight on the inside, since that part of your eye is, again, usually pretty wet because it's a tear duct. So just leaving that little highlight shows that it's reflective. Over in this corner, I usually darken it just a little bit to push it back to show that that's going kind of back into your face. And again, if it seems like I'm going a little bit quickly, it's just so I can make sure I get the whole drawing in the class period. Then tomorrow you guys can kind of review with the video if you need to finish it up or catch up on a certain part. I'll give you guys a moment because we're actually a little bit ahead of the other classes at this point. The next part we're shading is the whites of the eyes. So yes, they are white, but they have shading to them because it's a sphere. Now, if you think about when we shaded the sphere on our value practice sheet, remember you shade with the form, you don't go against it. So what I want you to do is just some light shading, follow the form. So you're kind of going back and forth here, really light shading. In the very corner, you can make it a little bit darker. And then right here under the top eyelid, add a little bit of a shadow. Make sure it's under though, not like on top because it'll look like eyeliner. This is just the shadow that's usually casted by your eyelashes because they're kind of crowding over your eyeball. And then you can come over to this side again, shade along the form, so back and forth along that rounded sphere of your eyeball, getting lighter as you move inward. And your eyeballs do usually tend to have little capillaries or little veins in them. Don't draw them like super harshly, so you don't want to like go in and, let me just do this. Draw them like if this is the corner of your eye, you don't want to go in and start doing these really harsh lines. You want to just like barely touch the paper and just kind of do like little squigglies. You'll barely see them, but it'll be enough to add a little bit of a level of realism. So you can see you can barely see them, but it's just a little added detail. Next part is the iris. What I usually do at this point is I go in and I kind of tighten up that circle, make it a little bit more perfected. I always go a little bit at a time. Anytime you try to make one perfect line that goes all the way around, trust me, it's usually not going to turn out perfect. It's probably going to have some errors. So I usually make these little like dashes along the way so I can correct as I go. Just bolden the outline of the iris. And then what I want you to do is make these little hatch marks along that line, but point them toward the pupil. So as you go around, it's going to point toward the pupil. Now if the eyelid layers over, you don't continue them because that part would be blocked. You can also do like these little short zigzag motions. That usually gets it done a little quicker. Then we'll do a layer that goes all the way to the pupil, but lighter, so not quite as dark. And this layer can touch the eyelid. Again, pointing at the pupil. So you should be rotating your kind of direction as you go. And then the last set of lines, again, go the full length, but make these a little darker and more spaced out. And you can always add more layers if you want to. You can make it lighter if you wanted to. It all depends on what your eye looks like, but we're just doing kind of like a generic, this is an eye drawing. Next, I usually go over that outline one more time so that it's covering up like those individual lines I made. Because most eyes do have some sort of outline on them, or irises. And then the pupil. So outline the pupil. Make sure you leave a highlight. So I usually add like a little circle where I'm not going to shade it in. And then I just shade in the rest. Because an eye that doesn't have any highlight usually looks like it doesn't have much life to it. Because your eye will always have a highlight on it because you're in a space that has lights, lamps, you're outside. So there's always going to be some kind of highlight. We're going to shade along that lash line one more time, adding a little bit more of a shadow over the top of the iris there. And the last thing is the eyelashes. Now, some things I want to mention about eyelashes. There are kind of 3 different directions they can go. They can go up, they can go down, they can go straight out, but at no point are they like this. They're not like little, I feel like there's some kind of cartoon character that has like little hairs coming out of their head that looks like that. They're not like a little cartoon character, right? No. Your eyelashes don't look like that. So eyelashes need to be done a little bit more slowly and carefully and built up over time. They're not individual lines that you perfectly draw straight. Because for one, these lines, they aren't tapered at all. They're just like lines and they're like the same thickness the whole time. Whereas eyelashes tend to be a little bit bolder at the base and then they kind of get thinner at the end. So how I do it is I do one layer first where I'm just doing these light little kind of flicking motions where I just do these little scoops upward. So I'm doing curled lashes that are kind of going up. As we get into the projects, I can always show you other ones too. So I almost do like these 3 little movements. I go like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So that way I'm getting a gradual eyelash, not just like a really thick straight line. Now as you move toward the center, they start pointing upward a little more rather than off to the right. And as you get to the side where your nose is, they get shorter. Now those aren't done yet. One more thing I like to do for those top lashes to show that they're kind of curving and then coming up is I go over this line here a little bit and do these little scooped lines. These are a little bit bolder, and that just makes it look like those lashes are actually curling upwards and not just coming up straight out of your eyeball. You can always go back in, sharpen your pencil so it's nice and pointy, and kind of add more detail to the lashes if you feel like they're kind of blending into things. And the very last thing we do is those bottom lashes. Bottom lashes are not necessarily done exactly the same as those top ones. They are shorter, they're usually more sparse and more delicate looking. So you don't want to start them from this line. So even though the top ones do, this bottom one, they usually actually come out after that lash line, so that gap. So we're going to bring them out from there. And again, they're lighter, they're shorter, they're a little bit more spaced out. Toward the center here, they are still shorter, even still. And as you move toward the center, they might start even crisscrossing a little bit. They don't tend to hold their position quite as well as those top lashes do. And then you've got an eye. We've got 5 minutes left, so does anyone either one have questions, or two, if you would like to show yours on the camera, I will give you a hero point. And sorry, I'm just getting one last shot of this close up.